There's no set formula for success in franchising. And today we're going to unlock and peel back what it's like to build a successful restaurant franchise. And I'm proud to have a conversation today with Jonathan Weathington of Shuckin Shack, a great client, a great human. We're going to have a good conversation today. I may have mispronounced your name.
You nailed it.
Did
No
I?
problem.
Okay.
Nailed it. Oh yeah.
Jonathan, I have to say, when we start off last June at the IFE Expo, we had a client networking event. And the highlight for me, because it's in New York City, we had clients at the show. And at one point, I turn around and you're there and you weren't even at the show. And I know you were flying somewhere else. And you said, Charles, I'm going to stop, and you came. And that meant the world to me. It was so great to meet up. But I think it's also indicative of the type of leader you are and what you're doing. And this is just no BS from me. Thank you. Like, that made the night special. It was great meeting up that night.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I was there for you guys. I actually just had a layover in New York, which was crazy. And so I called the airline and I had like I don't know, an hour layover at LaGuardia. And I called the airline and extended it to like a 6 hour layover and then just shot into the city and came to see you.
But like, you learn from others and their actions, not their words. Like, that struck me. Like, I'm like, how impactful was that moment with Jonathan? And just, like, you went out of your way to make those human connections, and it made a big difference. So it was a good lesson. And I think it folds in. I mean, we've had so many conversations along the way. Shuckin Shack, which is an amazing brand, a fun brand. Whenever I'm on your website, I also know the detailed hard work that you put into it. And, people that are going to be viewing, our audience, our subscribers who are amazing, franchisors, franchise buyers, brokers. So, like, let's set the table a little. Talk about Shuckin Shack and where you're at in that entrepreneurial journey, and we could go from there.
Sure. So, Shuckin Shack is I'm not a founder of the brand. I'm the CEO. I was around when the concept was founded, and I helped kind of found the franchising company, if you will, meaning I was employee number one before we had any units open. So I helped lay a lot of the groundwork for what's going on today. But Shuckin Shack as a whole, I think one thing that you have to think about when you think about us in particular, and if you know me, Charles, but those who don't know me, like, I am exactly who I am. And I think Shuckin Shack follows that culture a lot. And, culture is, we're culturally driven, and it's not something we put on paper and then decided to follow. It's something that we pursued and then ended up on paper. And so I think that for us, when you're looking at, yeah, of course, we're a restaurant. My 10-second elevator pitch is, if you like cold beer and you like raw oysters, you're going to like us just fine. If you don't, then that's fine too. Go find somewhere else to eat. And so that's just kind of the attitude that we take. We know we've created kind of this unique brand that's cool, that's fun. We're about having fun. We're about being authentic. We're about accepting anybody that wants to walk through our doors, and that's our primary purpose. And we just happen to deliver it in the restaurant space. We could be fixing dentist chairs, and I feel like we'd still have the same personality. It doesn't really matter. Our method of delivery just happens to be through food and beverage.
When you follow Jonathan on LinkedIn, I think you'll see the human element and how genuine Jonathan is. And it's so interesting time and again, even in our firm, as a business advances and succeeds, you really unlock the realization that culture is the most important asset. It just is. And of course, to have a real culture, it needs to be genuine. So from a culture standpoint, right? Because you have this franchise world out there, people selling franchises. I see the care you put in with your franchisees. I see the care that you put in being selective and focusing on operations. From a cultural standpoint, can you describe how it's influencing what you're doing with the Shuckin Shack brand as a franchise and how you're growing?
Sure, it quite literally influences everything. We talk less. It's hard to believe, and people wouldn't believe it unless you spent time in our office and in our restaurants. Yeah, we talk about food costs. Yeah, we talk about labor costs. Sure, we talk about numbers, just like every good franchisor should. Sure, we work through, we work through the supply chain woes, and we work through nuts and bolts of running a franchise system. We work through real estate. Everybody has a training program. There's nothing unique about that. What's unique is that we also talk about culture and fit probably 10 to 1 over everything else, especially when it comes to development and bringing on candidates into our system as franchisees. I mean, when we have discovery days or approval days, quite frankly, the jargon doesn't matter. Whatever you call them, that's fine for you. If you want to sell franchises or award them, that doesn't matter either. What matters is the people that are signing that franchise agreement. And when we talk about that at approval days or discovery days, when we sit them down at this conference table, 5-6 feet to my right here, we talk with them. I sit them down and say, make no mistake about it. Everybody sitting at this table right now is financially qualified and has the operational capacity to open a restaurant. What matters to me is whether you're a good fit. I don't care how much money you have. I do not care. You probably have more money than me, and that's totally fine. What I care about is whether or not you're a great cultural fit within our restaurant and within our franchise system. And if you're not, you're going to be a great franchisee for someone else. But if you are, then I think that we should move forward together. And so we talk about it from quite literally day one. When they become a lead and they go through our process, and then they become an official candidate, they submit their questionnaire, then they start showing interest, they go through the peer review or the validation process, and then they have the executive interview with me. A lot of people kind of get nervous at that initial executive interview. They expect me to ask questions about, tell me about your history. Let's talk about your resume. Why did you spend 25 years at this position? Why now? All of those things. I don't give a shit about that. What I care about is, do you like other people? Do you care about other people? Do you feel like you can treat them in the best way possible? And can you do that through food and beverage? And that's what we talk about.
And look, there's always an economic component, right? You have to help yourself to help others, and you have a great model. So aside from franchise investors or candidates or buyers focused on unit economics, which you agree and I agree is paramount, because when they open up, what do you find to be the most moving motivations when you're speaking with candidates about why they're interested or considering a Shuckin Shack, or like what stages are they at in their lives, and what's that push where maybe they're just going to be a great fit for Shuckin Shack?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think candidates almost always fall into one of 3 categories, and I'm just kind of going off the dome here. I haven't written anything down, but the first category is I've always wanted to own a restaurant and bar category. So this is that heart decision, right? So this is that candidate that comes in that may have spent 20 years in the corporate world, high-paying jobs. They've been able to, squirrel away some funds. Certainly, they're near retirement. Maybe a few more years would get them there, or they're at that precipice where they could retire whenever they wanted to, and they're looking for their next venture. That's kind of the I've always wanted to own a restaurant and bar crowd. I love that crowd. If there's a passion for it there, if these are typically people who spend a lot of time in restaurants and bars as consumers, so they understand what a good versus a great experience in a restaurant is. They understand what a good versus a great experience in a bar is. I love the candidate that comes in and says, I've always wanted to do this, and I believe that Shuckin Shack is the perfect fit. We often hear from that candidate in particular some phrase surrounding, I've looked for years and I finally found you. That's exactly what we hear from that candidate. And that's music to my ears, because it's a person who just understands the culture of a great restaurant and bar. It doesn't matter they have restaurant experience. Certainly that helps. We can teach all of those things. So that's candidate 1. Candidate 2 is what I would consider the line item candidate, meaning they're going to work really, really hard through your franchise agreement. They're going to tear apart your item 7. They're going to tear apart your item 19. They're going to ask for every concession possible. And you as an attorney know that candidate very well, where we're coming back to you and saying, hey, they want this and they want that, and they want this line removed and that line removed. We need to add this, and we need to add this contingency. It's not that I dislike that candidate, because I can get as analytical as it comes. What I want those candidates first focused on is, okay, number 1, are you the person actually operating this restaurant? Because if this is the approach that you're going to take to every interaction when it comes to your staff, your employee base, your vendors, but most importantly, your customers, I don't know that that's a great fit. So are you going to be hiring someone that's going to serve as the face of your business? Because first and foremost, We're concerned with top line, and you drive top line by bringing customers in. It's a supply issue. So we have to have a stronger supply before we can figure out what the profitability is on the bottom line. The best operators in our system are excellent at numbers, but they're even more excellent at serving people exceptionally well. And they understand that, and that's what it takes to build that top line, that customer base, that long-term customer base that's going to come back to you 2 and 3 times a week. And so candidate 2 is, we have candidate 2s in our system. And then candidate 3 is that person who's somewhere in between, that person who's built a nice nest egg. They're looking at 5 or 6 different franchise options, both inside and outside of the food space. They're really depending upon this franchise option as their retirement. This is their retirement vehicle. They want something that outperforms their IRA. They want something that outperforms their 401k. And they're looking at us. They're looking at an automotive franchise or a home services business, or something that's hands off. They really don't know from an operational standpoint. Am I going to be operating this? I don't know yet. Maybe I'll hire a general manager. Maybe I won't. How many hours a week am I going to spend here? I really don't know if I want to be in a restaurant 65 or 70 hours a week for the first year. Candidate 3 is sometimes the hardest because when you stack up, this isn't just germane to Shuckin Shack, but when you stack up any restaurant investment versus a lot of other franchise opportunities, they're hard to compare. There's a major contrast there because on the restaurant side, it's extremely difficult business. It's very people oriented. Whenever a business is very people oriented, there are ebbs and flows, there are ups and downs, and the loss of one person can change the culture of any restaurant. Whereas you look at it versus a home services business that might be run by 1 or 2 people, it's an entirely different investment model. It's an entirely different operational model. And so I kind of view candidates in one of those 3 life stages. But what we're after is, regardless of whether you fit in one of those 3 boxes, we're after someone that comes in and comes to us and says, this is it. This is it for me. I know the numbers are going to fall in line. I know that we're going to get there, but I love the way you treat people. I love the way you treat people because that's why people come into restaurants. Everybody's got good food. Spoiler alert, we all order from the same vendors. We might change our cook times a little bit, but some of the food on our menu is the same food at other restaurants. The difference is the people within the 4 walls.
Look, we did not plan this conversation, but the first thing I brought up was you as a person and how you treat others, right? So, and I know I've seen it, and that permeates through who you guys are as franchisors. So, Jonathan, could still be franchisors or new franchisors watching this video, or other restaurant owners considering franchising their business, right? I'm a big advocate and fan of franchising, but I'm also, a big advocate of too many people are told they can franchise when they shouldn't, and it becomes a pet peeve. And I rant about it. I don't know if anyone listens to me, but what's your advice for, that successful business owner? And one of the things I tell them is, you really need, or her, understand the 5-year vision. Can you envision this 5-year journey, the initial stage where it's an uphill pull and you're learning and doing, so what's your advice for that successful restaurant owner who wants to franchise and they may have some questions, but what advice would you give them?
Sure. I think that, you described it as an uphill journey. I would describe it as a mountain climb, in the sense that you start low on the mountain and you're by yourself and you don't need ropes, but that doesn't mean you're not tired. Your legs are tired because you're lacking oxygen and all of those things. That's what the first 5 years looks like. And then you hit that first wall and you realize there's a rope there, but you don't know how to use that rope. And so then you figure it out over like the next 2 years, probably. And then when you get higher up on the mountain, you realize, okay, I've kind of got my way under me, but this is a lot steeper and there's a lot more rope. So I have to figure out those things. So your equipment and the people that you're surrounding yourselves with gets better. But the journey doesn't get necessarily easier. It just gets different. The challenges change. And I would say from people considering franchising, what people aren't told enough of is that it is really hard. It is really, really hard. Professionally, it's very easily, far and away, the hardest thing I've ever done. you have to be comfortable with a number of things. You have to be comfortable with risk first and foremost. And you can say, oh, my investment portfolio says that I have a high comfort of risk. That doesn't, it's not the same. You have to be very comfortable with stress. You have to be, just personally speaking, mental health. You've got to know yourself. You got to know what you can handle. You've got to know where you can push and where you can pull and where you need help. It is extremely difficult. It is extremely difficult because, we started franchising because we were really good operators and we ran very profitable restaurants. That's the first two steps. If you're talking specifically about the restaurant side, you have to look at your bottom line profit and loss statement and say, if I were to subtract another 8% off of this, would it still be a good investment? If the answer is yes, then you should do it. If the answer is no, then do not do it. You should stop there and improve upon your profit and loss statement until you can consistently achieve that number and say, if I were to take another 8% off of this, which is going to be your royalty and national ad fund fee, is it still a good investment? If the answer is yes, then the next question should be, is this something I can repeat? Or is this something that works in my local market because it's seasonal, because I'm the mayor of the town and everybody knows me and they just visit me regardless of whether my food's any good or my drink's any good? If it's something repeatable, then absolutely. And then the third thing is, do I have the appetite for it? Which is the one that people most often ignore. And you've really got to take a hard look at not just the pro forma of your business, the business plan. You've got to take a look at the thought that, for me in particular, as employee number one and a founder, quote unquote, of the franchising company, I was alone for the first year. It was me. I was making all the decisions, most of the decisions. I mean, I have two partners. One is more of a silent partner. The other is operational. But for me, as the leader of the company, you may have the safety network or a colleague network like IFA or like individual organizations. But at the end of the day, you're still the one making those decisions. Regardless of what the best practice is, at times you're going to be writing a hell of a lot more checks than you are going to be bringing in money. You have to be comfortable with those things, and it's just not for everyone. Practically speaking, I think when you grow from location 1 to 2 or location 1 to 2 and 3, you've got to have additional market proof in markets that are outside of your initial territory and see if it works. I mean, there's a number of things. The business plan and the pro forma have to be solid. You can't assume that you're going to get $2,500 a month rent everywhere. It's not going to happen. So you've really got to stress out that pro forma. You've really got to look at that business plan and dig really, really deeply. Do you already own the piece of property? If you do, then you shouldn't count that in your occupancy rate. You need to add another 8% and take it off the bottom line. There's a lot of quantitative questions you have to ask. But for me, the decision to franchise and to accept new challenges, I'll put it that way, is far more qualitative than it is quantitative.
And by the way, everything you mentioned, that's like a mini course on checklist items about franchising your restaurant. I appreciate that. The thing that sticks out the most is, for me, look, we'll both be at a development conference next month, right, on relationships and best practices. So I think what you do very well in being involved in the industry, I tell our clients that, while everyone wants to take credit when a franchise brand succeeds, when they don't succeed, everyone blames the founder and leadership team, right? But just know, along the way, we can help. But it's that founder and leadership team learning franchising to make smart decisions and know the right. And it is all driven by that. And, everything you do and how you're involved. I mean, that's why I tell clients also, even if they're checking all the boxes, can you envision yourself going to conferences and professionally, right? Because it requires that type of presence and leadership. So I think that's amazing advice you shared. So one of my favorite questions, because this sounds silly, but I do look at everything like, one day I'm going to be dead, and I'll be dead for a lot longer than I was alive, and hopefully it's not for a long time from now. But, from entrepreneurship and business does transform, and that's why I love franchising and clients like you and great brands. But How do you feel like when you meet franchisees and you see them succeed? Like, what are the things you're thinking about?
Honestly, it's almost a somatic response for me. It's like it gets me pretty emotional whenever I look at franchisees within our system where quite literally because of their decision to become a franchisee, that's the first decision. The second decision is to maximize the system, meaning I recognize that this brand is a good brand. How can I not only do everything that I'm supposed to be doing, but help build that brand and see the bigger picture? When you see franchisees in our system that do that, and then of course the money comes after that, it is transformative. I mean, it truly is. I've seen franchisees come into our system. We have a franchisee in our system that was in the restaurant business. I won't tell you how long. I won't tell you which franchise location it is. In the restaurant business for almost 2 decades as a GM, as an assistant GM, as a training store. You know, from a financial standpoint, never made more than 60 or 70 grand a year, for almost 2 decades. And that franchisee now is one of our top performing stores in the system. And for the last 8 years has been in the top three and will, I won't tell you how much money that person
Thank
will
you.
make.
No, no, no.
Well, but it is far more, I'm sure, than they ever thought they would imagine that they would ever make in a single year. And to see the transformation, not just from a financial standpoint, but they're just a different person. They're a different person. They give back to the community. They participate in their community. They're generous with their employees. At this point, they're a multi-unit owner. They employ 60 people. It's awesome. It's touching. It's heart fulfilling. It's all the things that you hope to do as a franchisor.
And I love the part, right? You didn't just focus on him. You're talking also about the 60 employees on his team, which is
That's right.
probably a reflection too about how he values his employees and his team members. And, and I guess as we do these videos, it's the funniest thing. I think I'm doing it for someone else. And I find every time, by the time the video's over, I did it for myself because there's lessons learned, right? And so like my second big point for myself, number one was culture. And I love you started with that. This past week, we had a team firm-wide meeting to go over culture and to go over core values and really set the table for our next quarterly meeting. But what was interesting for me was that I said, let's go through each core value. And if anyone has any comments about it, an example, if we're not achieving it, it was such a powerful moment for me because what I didn't expect, one of our core values is going above and beyond for our clients without expectations. One of the comments I got wasn't that, hey, we're not doing it, or was, hey, I'm concerned personally that I'm very busy with A, B, and C, and I may not be going above and beyond on other things,
Very self-reflective.
which was a beautiful comment. And as we explored it, I think one of the things that came out is like, number one, going above and beyond was an organizational thing. So maybe you're doing task X, but that may give me opportunity to do those things with those clients. So culture is always critical. And again, judge people by their actions. I mean, you delayed a flight to come shake hands in a very genuine way, and it impacted. The other, which is your point, which is team, right? And you're talking about employees, and like no organization succeeds without elevating their teams.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. It's like, in the same breath that you mentioned a while ago, when franchisees fail, it automatically goes back to the executive team. And on the success side, I get a lot of credit. I'm on a lot of podcasts, I'm in a lot of interviews, I get quoted a lot and all of those things. But I tell people all the time, and I am not joking when I say this, I do almost nothing. Certainly I have a day to day where I organize and where I pull levers and push buttons and get people motivated and delegate and understand the general flow of business. So in that sense, I do a lot, but it's not me. It's not me. Like, let me be very clear. It is not me. I deserve to share that credit. I deserve a small share of that credit compared to what my team does. And I think for me, I think from a leadership perspective, I've always been of the mind that I believe that people should make their own mistakes. And I think that when you work with me or work under me or as a colleague, as a teammate, I think that my team here would tell you that I allow you to make your own mistakes. Like if it's your department, then make it your department. And I will trust whatever decision you make. And if it's the wrong one, we'll figure it out together. But it's your department. I'm not going to breathe down your throat. That's not what I believe in. I'm not going to micromanage you or push you back from the table when it's time for the big boys to talk or anything like that. That's not fair. If you're the one that is speaking to the franchisees, you have a finger on their pulse, you understand what they're going through, then you need to be the one making that decision. I may not like that decision, and I may not have made that same decision, but it doesn't matter. We're going to figure it out together, and we'll work towards whatever successful thing that we need to work towards, as long as to the benefit of our system. And so, for me, I don't know. It's everything. I know what it's like to be employee number one and be the only person here. And this is a hell of a lot more fun now.
So as Shuckin Shack grows, Jonathan, and because there's a lot of fluff in the industry and all these things, and there's greatness in the industry, and there's great brands and genuine, and there's a lot of just fluffy things. But setting all that aside, and when we're talking about what could be a good culture fit franchise candidate, what's the compelling reason, or what is some of the compelling reasons or reason why Shuckin Shack just may be the best fit and opportunity for the right franchisee?
I think I have the quantitative versus qualitative talk a lot, and virtually all of my answers to everything. The quantitative side is that we don't have national competition. I think that's good enough. We can certainly go into all the other things of, seafood as a growing segment of the industry. We can go into, smaller footprint means less labor. You can find all of that on our website. I'll let you read that on your own. But the qualitative side is, do you want to make a difference in your community? That's it. If you want to bring something to your community that I would guess north of 90% of communities in the entire United States have never had anything like us. If you want to make a difference in your community, then I think would be a great fit. But make no mistake, you're not going to open the doors and people are going to flood in. That's not how it happens. You have to make the difference yourself. This is a people-driven industry. We are in hospitality. People dine out to have an experience. And you have to be the provider and leader and the person in charge of them having that experience, either through you being there as an operator or you imparting and coaching that knowledge into your individual employees. If you can do that, then you'd be a great fit in our system.
That's a precise answer, right? Very precise.
Yeah, we know what we want.
Yeah, that's, I sometimes I wasn't with you. I get worried asking that question because I'm like, it's not an easy one to answer.
Right.
I mean, but you have to live that, and and that's the thing about culture, right? If it only sticks and it's only effective if it's genuine, and it really drives you when you look at yourself in the mirror every morning, that am I being genuine, and are we driving toward that goal? So I appreciate you sharing that. I appreciate you spending the time, and I'm looking forward to meeting up next month.
That's right. Yeah, we'll see you next month in Chicago.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Yeah, thanks for having me.